Harlan, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
Your book is about the career-defining moments of top business leaders. So let's start with the most basic question. What is a career-defining moment?
Career-defining moment is the most important decision that a business leader makes in his or her lifetime, a decision that really defines them as a business person and has the greatest impact on their business life. Sometimes you don't know it's your defining moment until you look back over your entire career. Other times you might know it immediately because it's a result of a crisis or some monumental success.
Right. So in that sense, how does a defining moment differ from the countless very important decisions that a CEO or indeed any business executive may be called upon to make?
Because usually a defining moment has the greatest impact on a person's company. The risks are usually greater, and the potential downturn, if there's a problem, are usually greater, and the rewards are usually greater.
Well, I wonder if we can explore this a little bit further with looking at your own experience. Okay. You know, your own defining moment came when you were chairman and CEO of Medicare Glasser, which was one of the largest retail pharmacy chains in the U.S. Could you tell us that story?
We were a privately held company, and we were growing rapidly, and we needed additional funds with which to grow. So we had a number of choices. One was to go public, and while we were considering that, we had an offer from Pet Incorporated, a conglomerate on the New York Stock Exchange, to buy our company. We felt that that was really the answer to our growth problems because they had the resources to finance the expansion plans that we had. Shortly after I became part of the pet company, I became a group president, and I had responsibility for 6 out of their 17 operating divisions. From that vantage point, I had the opportunity to really look at management firsthand and how they made decisions. They were very risk averse. As a matter of fact, their culture was one where they would manage problems as opposed to solving them. And so my partners and I felt that if we could reacquire our company, we could implement our growth plans better ourselves. So that became my defining moment, approaching Pet with the idea of buying our company back. Needless to say, there was a very tough negotiation, and it was a prolonged negotiation. But in the end, we did reacquire our company through a leveraged buyout. And it was a good decision, but it was the most important decision I ever made. The result was that our company really grew and prospered, and we really had an impact on the industry itself.
So in terms of size, for example, how much did the company grow after you took it back from Pet?
Well, first of all, we developed the first chemically-based drug interaction database in the country. And that database would allow a pharmacist to notify a patient who was on more than one drug if a drug they were taking could interact and adversely affect them. We started to open healthcare stores in our pharmacies. We formed a network of drugstores throughout the country where we could get prescriptions filled if we didn't have a store in that area. We got very heavily into mail, and we formed a joint venture with Sanus, which is an HMO headquartered in New York, and the result was a company called Express Scripts, which is today I think the second largest pharmaceutical benefit company in the country. They, I think, fill prescriptions for over 50 million people today. It's on the list of the Forbes 500 largest companies.
Well, so with that kind of growth, I'm sure that it's not hard to understand why you feel that was the defining moment of your career. Turning now to the other CEOs whom you interviewed for your book, how did you go about selecting the 39 other CEOs?
Some of them I knew, and I knew their backgrounds, and I knew that their stories were compelling. They were fascinating. Others were referred to me, and after talking to them, found that, again, they had stories that were so interesting, compelling, and they had lessons to be learned by the reader. And I felt that the lessons that they learned would be invaluable to anyone that was interested in, number one, getting into business, or if they were already in business, allow them to move further in leadership roles.
I mean, could we talk about a few examples of the CEOs whom you spoke to? For example, a number of the stories that they told you were about career decisions that they made.
Yes.
Could you give us some examples?
Well, Bill Rasmussen. Bill Rasmussen is the founder of ESPN. Bill had been the communications director of the Heartland Whalers hockey team, and he had just gotten fired because they had had a bad season. They literally got rid of everybody. Bill and his son Scott wanted to get involved in doing sports broadcasting up in the state of Connecticut. They had a couple problems. One, they had no money, and they had no way of broadcasting the television programming into people's homes. Bill borrowed $9,000 on his credit card to start ESPN. He made a deal with RCA to rent what they call a transponder, which was a device that would allow him to broadcast into people's homes. And the reason he was able to do it was he wouldn't have to pay them until 120 days after he signed the contract. His defining moment came when he made the decision to start a 30-minute sports program called SportsCenter. And that's what put ESPN on the map. That's really made ESPN. They were able then to strike a deal with Anheuser-Busch, and they got, I think, $1,300,000 to give them exclusive on their products, and the rest is history. They went on to be a dramatic success. Then you've got Sandy McDonald, who is chairman and CEO of McDonnell Douglas, which is now part of Boeing. His uncle, who ran the company, it was a one-man rule type business. One person made all the decisions. When he took over, he felt that he wasn't capable of making all the decisions alone. He needed other management people with him. So he sought advice from a number of people that talked to him about becoming much more professionally managed. So he moved from a one-person rule into a professionally managed company, and that was his defining moment. And I mean, it was where he had participative management. And it was just a real good decision because it got people involved who had a lot of skills, who heretofore were not able to implement them.
Right. Apart from career choices or career decisions, what kind of other defining moments did the CEOs tell you about?
Well, take Richard Mahoney, Dick Mahoney, who was the CEO of Monsanto Company. Monsanto's core business was actually in trouble. He had to really reposition and refocus that company. He was in the chemical business and the petrochemical business, which really became a commodity item. And he developed through a long-range plan the ability to get into agriculture, ability to get into pharmaceuticals and life sciences. And in my opinion, his transformation was probably the greatest transformation of an American company in the history of business. It was just that impactful.
Wow.